Hey YouTube and vinyl community, it is Andy from the Fence Post Vinyl channel. Given that I only have about 900 subscribers as of the moment of this recording, you may not know who I am. Anyways, I've got my Shiner Bach from Texas, and I am going to dig in not just to this Bach, but also to my vast collection, which you can see right here. And I'm going to share my take on the Vinyl Tag 2024. What is Vinyl Tag? Vinyl Tag, if you don't already know, is this thing where people in the vinyl community run down a list of a number of questions that somebody picks. This particular list is one that I saw posted to Noble Records, and I loved it because it was just kind of listed out all 20 of them right there in the description. So I'm gonna just use that one for this particular list. I've got my trusty laptop right here with the list, and I've got my stack of records off screen over there that I'll be sharing with you today. First up, favorite record you purchased in 2023, and that goes to Skinty Fia Sessions by Fontaines DC. As a teen in the 90s, I was always drawn to some now actually quite classic MTV Unplugged sessions, most notably Nirvana and Alice in Chains. This love for acoustic renditions of much more electrified studio productions continues to this day, and fast forward from the mid-90s to the late 2000s, and you had Day Trotter, which saw indie bands swing through this small town in Iowa to record these sessions on vintage instruments that Day Trotter owned. Skinty Fia Sessions follows both of these lines, unplugging 4 beloved tracks off of the post-punk band's 2022 LP, Skinty Fia. I love this record. It is so good. If you like acoustic stuff and you like kind of like the more post-punky side of acoustic, definitely check this one out. This right here is a Rough Trade exclusive. I don't know if they have any pressings left, as it was technically a 2022 pressing, but seek that out if you can. Otherwise, you can find it on Discogs. Next up is the last record you bought in 2023, and for me, that goes to In Ribbons by Pale Saints. First off, any videos of mine that I mention in this video, I will link to down in the description. That said, take a look at my countdown of the top 10 albums I spun in 2023, and you'll find The Comforts of Madness by the Pale Saints on that list. That's the band's 1990 debut, and I kind of became obsessed with it early last year, and that continued on through today. I was a bit of a holdout on this 2023 reissue, which is the band's follow-up from 1992, and it arrived on December 30, officially becoming the last album I added to my collection in 2023. This here is the deluxe 30th anniversary remasters pressing, which comes on this kind of hazy, pale, translucent vinyl. The first LP is the remastered version of the album, and it also comes with a second LP containing demo versions or demo sessions of the songs, and 2 brass band renditions of songs from the album as well. I would say, prefer The Comforts of Madness, but In Ribbons is quite solid, and I highly recommend it for fans of early shoegaze, or if you're just wanting to explore that subgenre. Number 3, a band or singer who released 2 or more albums in the same year, and my selection for that is Big Thief. A lot of people do well-known artists, and that is not necessarily me. I have a big indie collection, and Big Thief is part of that. So Big Thief has graced my turntable quite a bit over the past 5 years. Back in February of 2019, they released this right here, which is called UFOF. Solid release, but I also feel is probably their weakest one so far. They followed that with Two Hands that October, and this is the one that really hooked me on the band. It initially was not the full album, but it was the song Not. It's a hefty rocker with a killer guitar solo and truly awesome lyrics. If you aren't familiar with Big Thief yet, and you want to just test it out, seek out that song and let me know what you think in the comments. I love it. It's still one of my favorites to this day from the band. Number 4, if you could only listen to music from one decade, which one would you choose? This is a hard one for me. I mean, we could go all the way back to the 60s, and you got early garage rock and psychedelic rock in that decade. Then there's the continuation of psych, the birth of punk, post-punk in the 70s. The 80s saw more great post-punk, new wave, some jangle. You have a couple of my favorites in there, the Feelies, the Smiths. And then you've got the 90s with the explosion of grunge and alt-rock and a lot of indie greats in there as well. But I gotta say that it's probably the 2000s that really cemented a lot of my musical tastes, even in terms of that decade encouraging me to seek out music from the decades that inspired it. So let's take a look at a few from that. First is The Rapture with Echoes, which just got reissued this last fall. I love this album. It turned 20 last year, so 2003, and it's this post-punk meets electronic, but it's also got a whole bunch of other stuff thrown in there. The diversity on this album in terms of the style, going back and forth from these hyper-danceable tracks to these super mellow ones, is just incredible, and I highly, highly recommend this album so much. Check out and see where it landed on my favorite reissues video of 2023. Next you have Interpol and Antics. And this one actually turns 20 this year, continuing down the kind of post-punk-ish sound, classic by Interpol. Going on to the folkier side of things is the Decemberists, and this is their debut album, Castaways and Cutouts. It's not the original, color vinyl pressing. This is just an early version on black vinyl. Nothing overly special there, but I truly love this album. I didn't really get into the band until their 2003 album, Her Majesty. Next up from the Pacific Northwest and Seattle in particular is this cool pressing of Menomina's Friend and Foe. I love this band. I saw them a number of times back in the late aughts and maybe even early teens, probably predominantly the late aughts when I lived in Seattle. Quirky and fun, super indie, but they've got some great stuff on this album. I believe this is the Vinyl Me Please pressing. It's just on black vinyl, but you don't really see this band out there a lot these days. Good stuff. And I'll leave it with one more, and it is Spoon, Kill the Moonlight. And I would say this band is responsible for my marriage. Why? So I went to this festival called Capitol Hill Block Party way back in 2007. I had just grown a mustache. It's always been on my face since then. She's never seen me without it. I was about to leave. I had seen the bands I wanted to see. I was covering it for my music blog, Fence Post, and I got a text from my friend Andy. I know, another Andy. And he's like, hey, all of us KZUU guys are meeting up to see the headliner Spoon. Why don't you come on down and hang out with us? We'll be in the beer garden. Spoon was headlining, and we get together. I'm tired. I've got a long drive to get back to Ballard, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to deal with drinking because I don't really drink much anyways, despite what you see here. And my friend Cassie, who was dating that Andy, was like, when everyone broke off to go to the bar, I was just hanging out with her, and she's like, hey, I'm going to go meet up with my friend Andy, who is here to see her uncle, who's in the band. And so I was like, oh God, another Andy? Because there was literally like 3 or 4 Andys. I don't know what it was about this radio station, but it drew Andys like the plague. I was one of like 3 ginger Andys as well. So I get there and I'm like, oh, it's girl Andy. She's kind of cute. I like where this is going. And so we bonded that night over being the only 2 non-drunk people in the beer garden. So the next day, we were still hanging out. We were at a crappy Denny's at about 1 in the morning near my condo, and we exchanged numbers, and I called her up that night and asked her out on her first date, or maybe it was our second date if you count getting coffee and Sprite at 1 in the morning at Denny's the night you meet as a first date. That was that. We've been together for however many years it's been, 17. I'm old. Show a record by a band or singer from Manchester, and this is going to be an obvious one for me. I just want to show it again. It's the Smiths' Queen is Dead box set. This thing is freaking sweet. It has the remastered version of The Queen is Dead. It has the demo versions, which I think there's some really great demos from this as well. And it has a third LP, which is a bunch of live stuff from Boston. I covered this just the other week when I did a deep dive on the history of this album and kind of recounted a lot of things from the recording of the different songs and their how they were received and so forth. A lot of stuff from the bands themselves, and listened to Morrissey's autobiography. I didn't really glean much of that other than he tends to drone on. Like, no one can hold a grudge like Morrissey. And, you know, part of me is like, God, he's just such a whiny little man. But at the same time, part of me is like, there's some merit to some of it. But some of it is also like, did he also seem to dig his own grave in the whole mix of this as well? Because, I mean, after all, pretty girls make graves, right? Number 6, which band or singer did you listen to most in 2023? Now, a few caveats here. Number 1, my video on my Spotify Wrapped. Number 2 is the band that had the most in my most spun records of 2023. And third is my best albums of 2023 countdown. This band is on all of those. Blonde Redhead. And this is not one that I actually shared. I loved their 2023 album, Sit Down for Dinner. So good. I absolutely love it. It's my favorite of theirs since 23, which was from 2007. Possibly even in time overtaking that and being their best since 2000's Melody of Certain Damaged Lemons. This one, Misery is a Butterfly, turns 20 this year. It's a 2004 record. It is really good. It has some of my favorite Blonde Redhead songs on it. Falling Man, Equus, Pink, something or other. So good. And I'm going to do a deep dive on this album sometime this year. It's got some really fascinating stuff about it. It almost, in the lead up to this album, before they sat down and wrote and recorded everything, Kazu Makino was trampled by a horse and she almost died. She had this massive recovery, extremely traumatic event, and they did not know if she'd be able to sing again. Almost ended her career in addition to her life. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and dig into some of that in my history of this album when that comes down the pipeline. So if you like this kind of stuff, you know, hit that subscribe button, ring that little bell, do all that kind of fun stuff, right? Show 7 7-inch records, and I have a stack right here. Number 1 is going to be The Anniversary. I have been a fan of The Anniversary since the early 2000s when they released their only 2 records, Designing a Nervous Breakdown and Your Majesty. They kind of had this all kind of borderline emo, super indie. I love it. Male-female vocals, nice and rock-centric. They came out of the Kansas City area, and the label Vagrant Records. Alkaline Trio, Eels, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, Senses Fail, Saves the Day. It's a lot of other like emo-ish bands. Get Up Kids, Lemonheads, Thrice, you know, all of that kind of stuff. The second one, another band that I really got into in the 2000s, indie pop from Sweden, and there's this band right here called the Love Kevins. All one word, Love Kevins. And it's Blame the English. This is a 4-song EP. It includes some really great stuff. You can't really find this many places. I don't think many people have it. Many were not pressed. I don't feel like I hear this kind of indie pop out there all too often. Hyper catchy, not really as indie pop and twee, but as a lot of stuff that you get out of the country of Sweden, but still super great. Next up, grunge era, Tree People and Archers of Loaf. These 2 grunge Pacific Northwest-ish bands. I think Archers of Loaf is Pacific Northwest, although they could be Boston. Tree People featured Doug Marsh of Built to Spill, After Tree People, he would go on, or maybe even during, to join forces with K Records head Calvin Johnson and his baritone and awkwardness to form Halo Benders. This I stumbled upon this year, which was really cool. Here's some dream pop from Canada, a band called Drums. I absolutely love it. Very underrated. Not many pressed to vinyl. If you want to get them though, don't get this single. It has both songs on the guy's LP. I would recommend getting that one instead. Psychic Ills has been on my want list for ages as well. This is for the two songs Never Learn to Love backed with Cease to Exist. These are not Psychic Ills originals. They are actually Charles Manson originals, and I believe this is the last recorded release that the band had before the death of Trey Warren. Psychic Ills is from Sacred Bones Records, and they kind of produce this overly hazy, desert-like stoner rock, psychedelic folk type blend. The last album they had, which was called Inner Journey Out from 2016, actually featured Hope Sandoval on one of the songs, Hope Sandoval of Mazzy Star. Next is Angel Olsen, Sweet Dream. This is by far my favorite song by Angel Olsen. It was also on her 2017 album Phases, a compilation album of a bunch of singles and whatnots. It takes a different direction than her early kind of uber folk, stripped down minimalist side and her more recent, the same but country side, and it injects a lot more electric guitar. It's just powerful and good. I love it so much. Finally is Bunk Bed with Substance Abuse. This one is interesting. If you go to my videos tab here on YouTube and you sort videos by release date and the oldest, you will see that the first video I ever did way back in 2017 was a little review or featurette or something about this one, and it is awkward as it's terrible. Don't do that. Don't go look at that one. It's bad. I've come a long ways. Oh my god, we're only at like number 8. Who's coming to your party? Choose 4 music-related people to come to an imaginary dinner party, past or present. Who would you invite? An interesting one, because I only have 2 of the records pulled that I'm going to talk about. The other 2 people, I'll throw them in the mix as well. First person, Dave Grohl. If you do any search on who are the nicest musicians, I often see Dave Grohl on that list, and he just seems like a super fun, awesome guy. He's kind of like the Keanu Reeves of music. Next up, Henry Rollins. Also seems like a super cool guy, would be a lot of fun to hang out with. Super knowledgeable, very educated on music. I just want to like sit in the background and have the guy like play records for me. I think that'd be awesome. Next up at the dinner party is one of my all-time favorite musicians. I've talked about him before. It is Kevin Morby. This is his 2020 album, Sundowner. It was my favorite album of that year, and I finally saw him live this year. He's been atop my most played records for a long time. This is actually my most played record in my collection. I spin it all the time. It just summed up the isolation of 2020, the fear, the death that we all experienced with COVID and all of that stuff. He really dug into some of those themes. There's a lot of touches on people that had passed. So really good album. The other one, just because why not? I kind of throw a female into this mix. It is Katie Crutchfield, Kevin Morby's girlfriend. And she is from a band called Waxahachie. Her music kind of flirts both with indie folk and country, and this is really one of my favorite releases of hers. It's a 5-song EP called Great Thunder. It's very acoustic, less of the country, more of the just acoustic indie folk. There's some very emotional songs on here, so if you want to bawl your eyes out, there it is. Great stuff. We lost them. Choose one musician who passed away in 2023. Yeah, I thought I could choose Andy Rourke, but I already covered the Smiths. So I'm going to go back to January, so 1 year ago. Tom Verlaine passed away. He is from the band Television. Punk, post-punk, whatever you want to call it. Tom Verlaine is the frontman of that band. I'm going to pull out one album that I stuck right behind this, and I covered it right around the time that Verlaine passed away. It is a bootleg of the time Television met Brian Eno. They misspelled Brian here as well. So you want to check out that video for my deep dive on this record. It's very fascinating stuff that, you know, Brian Eno and Tom Verlaine in the studio together recording demos for what would become Marquee Moon. Number 10, imagine you could only listen to music from one country. Which country would you choose? I'm gonna have to pick the United States. Because there are so many good bands that I love here. It's a really hard one though, because I love a lot of areas in Europe. Sweden, like I said, the Love Kevins. You've got Acid House Kings, Club 8. You've got the UK with the Smiths and Morrissey and oh so many others. You've got Scotland, Franz Ferdinand, also turning 20 this year, so check it out. I'm going to have a video coming up in the next week and a half that covers that album, deep dive on the history of that one. Belle and Sebastian, one of my favorite bands, Scotland. Camera Obscura, good stuff. But the one I'm going to pull from the US is Voxtrot. They reformed in 2022 after about a 12-year hiatus. This is their debut album and the only full length that they released other than in 2022, releasing 2 compilations that are phenomenal. Show a record you bought when you were a teenager. And this is going to be an interesting one because as a teenager, I picked up this Taiwanese version of The Zombies by the Zombies. She's Not There, Tell Her No. You've got all sorts of great things on this album, and I have no clue what it's worth. I don't see it anywhere. Discogs has banned the crap out of it because they don't like to sell things that are unofficial. I've had this since the 90s. It's unbelievable to me. I can't believe I found that when I was a teenager, and I think I paid like $2 for it as well. That was a little bit different, isn't it? I usually don't show things from like the Zombies era, that style of music. Name 3 vinyl community channels you discovered in 2023. First, a quick shout out to Mike over at the Play Vinyl in the Milky Night channel for giving me a shout out. I had started pulling together my list, and then I just caught word that he gave me that shout out, and I just gotta say thank you right off the bat. If you haven't checked out his channel, do check that out. He has a lot of really great stuff. I think he said his favorite band is Stereolab, and he's got a lot of shoegaze and Cocteau Twins, a whole bunch of great stuff. I always love seeing his videos. Super friendly guy, awesome content, always has great lists, talks about awesome albums. The second one, Vinyl Reckoning with Matt and Stacy. Quirky, fun, bizarro videos. They have the best thumbnails and super cool people as well. I've chatted with Matt a few times through Instagram. Check out their Instagram. Check out my Instagram at FencePost with an S, not a C. And yeah, super fun, quirky videos and super wide range of music too. Like you've got some like uber like mainstream stuff, some of the stuff that Stacy pulled in some of her recent lists. You got Matt, who's got all these kind of like 2000s, like emo-ish, and some like harder, heavier stuff. Noble Records exclusives of late. I also mentioned that channel. But the other one I'm going to choose may not really consider herself as part of the vinyl community, but I kind of think she fits within the realm, and that is Abigail DeVoe. She does a lot of these videos that I kind of have modeled a little of mine off of, but she does them way, way better. And she's blowing up on YouTube with her Vinyl Monday series. Excellent stuff. She's only like in her early 20s or something like that, and she has a wealth of knowledge. She's just really good at digging in and scripting out these really in-depth documentary style videos. And she also throws in vintage style as well, with, you know, decking herself out in period era clothing that fits with the music that she talks about. A little bit more to the classic rock than I tend to prefer, but very good stuff nonetheless. Show a funk or soul record. I don't have a lot of funk and soul in my collection, but I do have some neo soul, and this will go to Curtis Harding. This is If Words Were Flowers by him. I believe this was a 2022 album. Yes, 2022. Personally, my favorite is Soul Power, which is from, I think, 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. This is his third. I don't think it quite lives up to the power of those others, but it is a cool piece nonetheless. A lot of great songs on here. I think it overshadows anything from his middle album. So if you want to check out one of them, check out Soul Power or check out If Words Were Flowers. Show a record you think everyone has, and then a record you think no one has. Everyone and their mom has Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Literally. I would be surprised if you comment and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got 2,000 records in my collection and I don't have this. If that's you, you're a unicorn. Everyone has this. What are you doing? I really like the documentary covering the artists that created this cover, by the way. The documentary is called Squaring the Circle, and it is about hypnosis, HIP, like you're hip or somewhat cool. Gnosis, Gnosis. That company created so many amazing record covers in the 70s and 80s, so do check that one out if you have a chance. Now, the record that I feel that no one has, I'm going to throw a caveat in there, they really should have. These are my friends from Denton, Texas, right here in the DFW area. Fishboy! I love Fishboy! Fishboy is so freaking amazing. It's kind of like this indie pop meets punk meets these elaborate stories, concept albums. And this one is called Albatross from 2007. It also comes with a subtitled name, which is How We Failed to Save the Lone Star State with the Power of Rock and Roll. It's a story. It has a comic. In fact, all of his albums come with comics. And one even came with a comic book. He's got some very quirky reels that he does on Instagram as well. They're fun. He's a great storyteller. So do check them out. So much fun. I love introducing people to Fishboy. I've never done it here on YouTube yet. What is wrong with me? Fishboy, check them out. Seriously. She's Great. A record by a female artist you bought in 2023. And I'm going to call out Katie Crutchfield again with Waxahachie. This one is the album Out in the Storm. It's a little bit different once again from her kind of acoustic folky. This has a little bit more mellowness and melody to it. It's a little bit more electrified, but in a dreamy sense. And you can kind of get that sense from the cover. I love this album. I didn't listen to Waxahachie all too much in 2023. I listened to him a lot in 2022, though. I think my favorite is the song Recite Remorse. The favorite video you posted on your channel in 2023 and the favorite video you watched in the vinyl channel in 2023. Okay, so my favorite video I posted would have to be my Don't Collect Vinyl video, which blew up a bit and is my most watched video here. It's got a lot of comments on it. It's fun to see what people say. It was really created as not necessarily a don't collect vinyl, but here are some things that you really need to think about if you're gonna start a vinyl collection. And it drew a lot of people to my channel. It still draws people to my channel. It's still my #1 most watched video every single day. I love seeing the traction that it's getting. And pretty soon here, I'm gonna do a follow-up to that and just kind of dig into the comments a bit and share some things from the comments and have my own commentary commenting on the comments, because why not? The video I really enjoyed from the vinyl community, and I would have to say that would go to Abigail DeVoe and her deep dive on the history of transatlanticism. very good stuff there by Death Cab for Cutie from 2003. I would go on after that to do a deep dive on the cover art of that in posing the question, was Transatlanticism's cover art inspired by the 1980 children's movie, The Secret of Nim? Which is kind of a quirky little one there as well. But do dig into that video too. I'll link to both of those in the comments below. Show me a record you describe as a 90s classic. And once again, kind of like that Smiths album, I'm gonna go with one I did a deep dive on just recently. And it's this heavy box set of Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy, and The Infinite Sadness. To me, this is quintessentially 90s. It's really the album that got me into exploring new music, like really like seeking it out. If Siamese Dream was the one that really took me out of my parents' era of the 60s, and not good 60s either, and pulled me into modern 1990s, Melancholy and The Infinite Sadness opened my eyes to wanting to discover more new music. 1995, I covered this album just this last weekend. I dig into the liner notes and share a lot of things that I've learned about the album from that. So do check that video out. I cover them every 3 to 6 months because they always seem to do well. So this one is If I Could Look Into the Cover. The task is look through your collection and choose a record cover you'd like to be a part of. I don't know why, but I immediately thought of Belle and Sebastian's Dear Catastrophe Waitress. It's weird AF. You've got her, who's pissed off. You've got him, who has spaghetti on his head. And you have frontman Stuart Murdoch over here, who is just casually eating spaghetti with a bunch of onlookers. Just sitting around hanging out. I just want to know what's going on. What's going on? Why are you mad? Why does he have spaghetti on his head? Why doesn't Stuart care? Come on, Stuart, care a little bit. Was that you? Was that her who has this empty plate? Who's just looking at you, pondering life's existence and the meaning of it? I mean, we know it's 42, but it's just interesting. Number 19. It's like a greatest hits. Show a record you're so familiar with, it feels like a greatest hits. This is where I'm pulling out Radiohead, and it is OK Computer. I don't know what to say about this album. It would be Perfect From Now On by Built to Spill and OK Computer that really got me into stuff, I was going to say not as mainstream, but this is kind of mainstream, that was a little bit off the beaten path. OK Computer, Paranoid Android. I was obsessed with that song, how different it was from so many other things that I was hearing at the time. And then, of course, after this, they came out with Kid A, which blew my mind. Idiotech, still one of my favorite Radiohead songs of all time. And finally, number 20. Show a record that was released in 1974. And I don't want to choose any of the obvious ones. I mean, I could have picked Bowie and Diamond Dogs, I think that was 74. I'm going to choose Can, and this original pressing of Soon Over Babaluma. I need to do a lot bigger deep dive into Can. I've got a few of their records. I really need that one that, you know, everyone seems to have if it's by Can. I don't have it. I can't remember what it's called. You probably know what it's called. I don't. This is a truly great album as well. There's my list, my 20 things. I've been sitting in front of this camera for an hour now. I've barely even sipped my beer. Ooh, it's still cold. I'm hungry. I need to go make my pizza. I was gonna make a homemade pizza tonight. This is my first vinyl tag. Vinyl tag 2024. I didn't do 2023. I wasn't really paying too much attention to the vinyl community then. I was really more geared on, you know, doing album reviews of my collection. So stay tuned for 2025. Like and subscribe. Next, check out the one that I enjoyed putting together most. Don't collect vinyl, because you end up crazy and ridiculous like myself. I mean, look at me. Ridiculous. We'll see you next time.